change person behavior.
I'm gonna. Makes sense.
Yeah, not just a lot of money.
Hey everyone. Hey Kaylee.
Hello.
Is there a way we can mute folks?
Yeah. Let me try.
Have us start with muting everybody. There we go.
Now everything is muted. I need you to just do it.
Hey everyone. Thanks for jumping on. I'm gonna kind of start here in a second. Just give us a couple more minutes and let people join up. Hey Darren, thanks for jumping on, man.
No problem.
I'm gonna start here in a second, but yeah, I'm just gonna, I know we talked a little bit, but I'll tag you in a couple times. It'll be pretty obvious. Okay. So I'm gonna give it a couple more minutes to let people join, but let me go ahead and just share my screen here. So I'm still getting used to this new, to our new system here, using Circle on this platform. It's always a little different. So Kaylee, are we seeing my slideshow screen here?
We are. Yes.
Right, awesome. Let me do this actually, so I can see everyone else. I'm going to put you guys on a different screen. There we go. All right. Okay, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started here. So everyone, thanks for jumping on. This series that we're doing, what we're really trying to focus on, has been something that, people have been asking us for a long time, questions around, how do I generate ROI from our machine, and, kind of what are the best practices. And we've been seeing, from a lot of our customers, different strategies on how to do this. So, the goal with this series is to talk about this across the different segments that we work with. But we want to start with, definitely our biggest segment, which is, sports performance businesses, and kind of just first and foremost, kind of share the strategies we've seen working, but then really open it up as a discussion amongst you guys on, let you guys share what you've seen work, what doesn't work, both for charging, for testing, for training, and kind of, how you package that and how you market that successfully. So I'll jump in, and then we're going to have some times during this where we're going to kind of open it up for discussion. So just kind of, I guess, stay on mute until then, and then we'll jump in. If you have any questions, though, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can, I have no problem. This is a smaller group. Feel free to interject at any point, but we will have a little discussion, places where you can, ask questions. So first and foremost, what are the main, ways that people acquire, ROI with Proteus? Really, it comes down to these, three main categories, and we're going to talk about each of these in turn. But it's monetizing testing, and upcharging for training, and then ultimately it's about acquiring more customers, right? But really, that's an indirect method. The two direct methods are that monetizing testing and upcharging for training, and we want to go over the different strategies there. But we see people being able to charge anywhere from $50 to $250 per test for testing. And then when it comes to training, there's a few different methods. There's increasing rates across the boards. There's, charging for, training packages, things like that. But we're going to start with the monetizing testing part of this. So when we're talking about that, what we're really talking about is one of the tried and true ways that people have always used Proteus to monetize, which is charging directly for those performance tests performed, anywhere from $50 to $250, with the average price probably being around $125 for most of our customers. Now, one of the biggest questions we get is, what's the difference between, what's offered in those $50 tests and those $250 tests? And a lot of it does come down to what is your market support. That is part of it. But ultimately, our customers that are charging $50, they're usually doing these in kind of shorter forms, right? So they're maybe doing more rapid tests. Maybe it's 10 to 15 minutes of an appointment with an athlete. There's probably fewer movements in the test. So they're maybe doing tests that maybe consist of maybe just a push-pull chunk rotation and then like a lower body or, something maybe around the 4 to 5 movement range. And then afterwards, they're really just giving them the report. They're not necessarily going over the data with the client. You'll give them some light interpretation, but they're not necessarily giving them a full-on report. The programming is really ended up being left to the client themselves. Now, if you compare that to something that's like the $250 test, which is on the other end of that scale, for that, it's usually going to be a much longer appointment. Maybe it's a 30, 45-minute appointment. You're probably going to test more movements. Maybe you're going to do a Cressy test. Maybe you're going to do one of the sport-specific tests that are, somewhere in the neighborhood of, 15 different, total exercises being tested. And that's also going to come with a more of a consultation. So you're going to be going over the data with them. You're going to be explaining those results, and you're probably going to include some programming based on the movements that we suggest. You might actually give them an actual routine that they can follow. So it might come with you building a routine for them as well. So that's kind of what that tends to look like. And actually, we got some people on here that are on this list. But when we talk about this, there's another kind of differences in the way that people approach this, which is how you charge to members versus non-members. So we've seen this, which I think is a kind of an important detail. You have the ability to say, sell and charge when a member tests a different price for when a non-member tests. And maybe when the member tests, maybe it's mandatory for that first time test. So Kyle King, I know you're on here. You said something in a discussion that I pulled out that was in our community platform, where they have everyone that has a mandatory first time test that's $100. And then from there, they program and reassess every 4 weeks. If an athlete chooses a different program or route and wishes to reassess, they charge $75. So they usually have a discounted rate. And this is pretty common, something we've seen where people offer discounted rates for subsequent tests. So maybe that first time test is $100. For members, it's $75 for those discounted, or for those members. When a non-member tests, they're maybe going to charge a little bit extra, right? But for the most part, when we think about timing of it, it usually means you're going to be doing some sort of initial assessment, right? A baseline test. You're going to do a progress check test, maybe every 4 to 6 weeks. And then if they're going to kind of graduate from your program, say they're doing more of a training camp model, or they're not going to be in for a while, that's when you're going to kind of do that last test before they leave. And again, depending on kind of how you see things, work at your facility, you might have different rates for members and non-members. So, here's another example for Ron Monvez, who posted that if someone is a client, they charge $50 for $49 for a Proteus testing in a training session. If it's a former client that just wants to do a Proteus test, they charge $150. And if someone that is not a client and just wants to do a chest, they charge $197. So you can see here these different rates for testing depending off their members or non-members, whether they're doing a repeat test or not. So something that I think is, definitely important to share. And just some other examples here. This is at Respire LLC. Michael Sheffield said that he's been charging $50, but they've been advertising monthly price and subscription between $100 and $150 add-on, which includes 1 monthly test and 2 private 30-minute Proteus sessions. So that's something to keep in mind. And Bill Miller, who's been doing this for a long time, they've done it to have a single testing day for $100 with a $50 retesting option. So that's something, again, you kind of go back to that, initial test, maybe even more expensive than those subsequent tests. And then it's just whether or not you're charging a different rate for members versus non-members. So I figured I'd kind of open it up, and I called on my buddy Darren here to jump on, to have him be on here so I could pick on him first if I needed people to. So Darren, maybe we start with you, man. How are you, you doing this? Are you doing any of these methods above here? And you're muted right now. Not sure if we can.
There we go. Is that better?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so we were one of the very much OGs in the thing. I think, Bill was around the same time as me. We were early fall of 2021. So not at the time we were doing it, not many people knew, what it was or what about it. So, we had to get people in and do proof of concept. So we were charging kind of bare minimum at the time around then, $50, I think, for a test and $50 for a retest. But now I think we mimic Kyle a little bit more in his model. We charge 200 for our full assessment, but that's the Proteus test and all the other things we do, laser timing, mocaps, all that stuff. And so we do that and we charge 200 for it straight up. And then we do it once end of season too, or end of off season, because we're primarily baseball players. And then in the middle, we just kind of sporadically, if we do a Proteus retest, we generally try to test every 4 to 6 weeks, the Cressy performance test. We just do $50 for that. But usually we're still kind of back and forth a little bit. We usually charge $50 to do it separately, and we kind of devote a day for it, I think, like Bill had said. But we're also playing around with just kind of doing it within that person's session, since we are, private training and performance sessions. So we've been playing around with both of those. And then we've also gone a team route on it. And I know the group training feature coming soon will be super helpful for this, but we're also doing a team route where, each member of the team, we're trying this with 2 schools, one in softball, one in baseball, where we give them weekend time slots. They pick one, they come in, we charge $150 a person. They do the test. We give them kind of a little sample program they can take with us. Usually it's going to be, a power deficient person or accelerate deficient person, or, a middle of the ground, fairly equal one. And then we do that every 6 weeks. And so we're actually playing around with that. But I will say the team we did that for ended up ironically winning about 10 games in a row. And going pretty far after we did that, so that was kind of a cool side statistic for that. But awesome. So we're playing around with those models right now, as far as that goes. But it's seemingly a couple $100 because again, our testing takes about 90 minutes to close to 2 hours, since there's so much going on. It generally gets them in, and because of the amount of testing we do, the people that see it. And see how much we do, the buy-in is pretty much there for private training after that, since we are downtown Chicago and do charge at a premium. And so we're a little bit lax on the mid-off season testing. And then, we kind of do the full thing at the end of the off season again too. And, that just, it really helps. The con is, we have kind of 2 months where it's big revenue and, then it's just, standard client revenue in between, but it works very well that way so far. We're not really getting any pushback.
Interesting. Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's always interesting to see how those things evolve, right? I think when we were first started out recommending this, we probably didn't even think about doing different prices for tests and retests, and so we might have been the ones advising you to do all one thing at the beginning. So
it's total trial and error, and people didn't even know what this thing was. They were still kind of learning it, and now when you mention the word, you hear Mahomes or you hear TikTok, so it's much different now as well.
Right. Yeah, we get now it's the Mahomes pricing, right? So yeah, anyone else have anything they feel like sharing here? Any other success or learnings from different pricing models that they've seen work for other folks? If not, I'll kind of keep on moving here, and we can feel free to jump in any other point. All right. So I kind of next want to jump in kind of in the next phase here, which is more on kind of how do people charge for actual training, right? And so this one's a little bit more fuzzy, to be honest, but we've seen a couple different methods work, and I'd really love to hear what some other folks on this call, maybe how they're doing things. But there's basically 3 main strategies that we've seen work, right? There's the first and foremost is increasing your rates across the board. It's the simplest method, right? There's then charging for training that includes Proteus. That's, versus, a different rate for those that don't. And then there's what I call selling training sessions. So these are just direct sessionizing Proteus, right? Which we already saw, I believe, in one of those examples above, some people doing that. And we can kind of go over what those, how that actually looks. But if we talk about that, really, let's give examples of each of these. So if we're increasing rates across the board, what we're really talking about is, say, charging extra now that your facility includes Proteus. So, hey, you've added Proteus. We're now charging $10 a month more for access to Proteus, right? Or let's say you're, doing by session. Maybe you're going to increase that rate for sessions on Proteus. So maybe it's to include it, it's extra $10 per session. Now, on top of that, you can also do things like charging for sessions that include Proteus versus ones that don't. So if they do include Proteus, maybe that's the extra $10 charge. But as opposed to increasing rates across the board, when you're increasing rates across the board per session, really what I'm talking about there is assuming everyone in your membership base or everyone that's coming will have access to Proteus. So essentially by increasing the rate on everyone, you're giving everyone access. With these other two methods, you're really kind of reserving the training access to different groups. So you might have some groups that use it and some groups that don't. And depending on your business model, this might make more sense. So maybe this is something like you're charging for $10 more for those clients, or you're doing something, and that's something we'll go over here in a second, which is kind of having like a premium access to Proteus, right? So having this premium access versus when you're selling kind of training sessions, this is really more around selling individually booked sessions on Proteus. So that's either one-time fees where maybe you're charging, say, $25 for a 15-minute session, or you're selling an 8-pack of sessions for $200, or you're doing something like a training camp or something like that. So we'll kind of go over this a little bit more in a second here. So, I took Darren here, his example. I believe actually, Darren, you were one of the ones that first kind of showed us this, having success, just increasing your rates for your session. Mm-hmm. So we took that as an example of, hey, you have Proteus now, increase your rates just to have all your members have access to that. We've seen other facilities just say, hey, we're increasing our rates $10 across the board. So, obviously, Darren, you're going to have more, you're going to get a little bit more of a return there doing it per session versus doing it per month. But just depending on what your client has access to, or, what your membership base can tolerate, you can kind of go that direction. You also have the ability to sell packages. Now, something that we've seen work through this is really when we work more with smart gyms that are kind of really, focused on really sessionizing all of their workouts. They're doing things where they charge, say, $25 for a session on Proteus, or they're doing a, 8-pack of sessions for $200, which is something I kind of included here. This is a place called Quantify Fitness in Nashville that's doing that method. Just kind of sharing their pricing sheet. They have, say, access to Proteus is going to be, an extra charge per month, and they can say do access to Proteus is $70 more a week or $70 more a month, for access to Proteus once a week, or 2 times a week, they're $140. So a couple of different ways you can do that. But what we've seen kind of be the more recent kind of ways that I should say, there's been kind of the older way that we've seen to do this. And this is, again, Bill Miller, who Darren mentioned, who did this a long time ago. He really goes this training camp model, which is essentially building an entire training camp around Proteus and around, everything else he's doing. He's doing all the tests, all these different tests for baseball. He's doing, radar. He's doing Rapsodo. He's doing all these things. And he's basically selling sessions in a package that all is built around that baseline Proteus testing, training on Proteus, and then progress testing on Proteus, and then doing that final test on Proteus. And he sells it, say, $250 for each player. So that is an option where you can do that. Another one that I've kind of learned about recently is what I'm going to call the premium tier method, or you can almost at this particular business, they're going to call it the academy, their academy model. So essentially, the way this would work is, let's say you had a membership base, and your regular members, you want to give them access to Proteus, right? But you want to differentiate the difference between the regular members and the premium members. Well, the regular members, what they can maybe have access to is still getting on Proteus, but they're only getting freestyle and workout modes, and they're not doing any testing, right? So this is a great situation. If you say you had a baseball training facility, you had some people coming in and out of the facility, you want them to have access to it. You maybe even could increase their rates for having access to Proteus, but you want to reserve kind of this higher level of service for these premium members, and that what you're giving them is access to maybe not just Proteus, but other types of technology, but you're also doing more individualized programming. So because you're doing those Proteus tests, you're going to be able to individualize each of their programs. You can maybe do small group training type of sessions, but essentially that lets you have sort of a kind of regular tier access where they essentially don't either, have a profiles on Proteus. Maybe they're accessing freestyle, or potentially you're not even giving them access. And then those premium members, you're testing them, you're allowing them access to training on Proteus. You're maybe individualizing those training programs. And maybe that's involved also with doing some other types of tests. Maybe you're bringing in more sport specific, testing technology. Maybe you're doing more weight room type of assessments, et cetera. So those are kind of the different models we've seen work. So I'd be really curious. I'm going to start with Darren again, since I have him held captive here, and see kind of what he's done. As I mentioned, I think you started with the increasing the sessions across the board, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a tiered thing at first. So, first we kind of had to get proof of concept again, since we are private training. We wanted the, first batch of guys, kind of our loyal people, to see it, get some results, watch, their velos increase or whatnot. And then once we had that, we were pretty justified in a session rate increase for all of our athletes across the board, because there's no pushback at that point. So
Right.
that was pretty justified. And then because of the extravagant, and because we started using some other technology and stuff in our testing, and it was killing us on time, so we had to start charging the testing, which we just did this past off season, so 2022, and that worked out well. And then actually, something we experimented with in the spring and a little bit in the summer. Again, for those that do baseball stuff, we've been experimenting. I have a staff of 2, and I have an intern under me. So we've been experimenting with, we call it Friday Night Lights. It was an idea we stole from Rick at Clemson.
Okay.
And what he's been doing is they've been actually having on nights of game days or mornings of showcases or whatever these kids have to do, they come in and just go absolute beast mode for 20 to 30 minutes on it to get ready for their game or whatever. And we tested that out as a kind of self, or with an intern or something, advising them and having them do that, and it was actually pretty cool, because the kids were hitting some home runs and stuff like that.
Nice.
Rick's got a great podcast on why that worked, but we've been experimenting with that, is like a little $50 thing, and it actually unfortunately got really popular towards the end of the season, but it's definitely an add-on we're going to do, because I think for the showcase side of it, it calms the kids' nerves, and I think the ones that did it, we're bombing the ball out of the park. So that really helps them. And so I think we got some buy-in there to where, it's off season now for these guys, but next spring and summer, we can do that as an additional add-on, and it really helps the guys.
Awesome. That's cool. Friday Night Lights. I love it. I mean, we've seen, it's really interesting, because one of the big uses that we talk about and we see a lot of success with is using Proteus as kind of like a priming tool before doing any type of, hitting, throwing, really any sport specific practice. It's a great tool to warm up on. So you've just found a way to kind of monetize that, which is awesome. I've never really honestly thought about that, but that's pretty cool.
It's great, and we can do it based on around the picture. And Rick, again, I'll have to find it. I'll post in the chat if I can. But he has a really great kind of scientific discussion on the whole uh, testosterone and how it works in kids, and how like that or heavy lifting can slow it. And these guys have more power, and they started doing it at Clemson with the Proteus and heavy lifting, and it made a big difference in their night games. And so we kind of stole that idea, and it kind of made a big difference here too.
That's
so
cool. It's kind of must be like a post-activation potentiation type effect is what I'd imagine. Although that's probably usually more short-term lived. So maybe it is the testosterone. Well, anyway, I'll have to look that up. It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. If anyone else wants to jump in, feel free to. You can also do the hand raise on this tool, and then I can call you out if anyone else has anything else. But if not, I'm going to jump into kind of the next section here, which is kind of just giving you an example of this, right? So just so people actually can see what these strategies can really turn into, what it can do for your bottom line. I wanted to illustrate kind of first and foremost, kind of like a minimal thing that you could do here. So if you take some of these strategies we talked about, let's just take the simplest thing you could do, which is increasing your rates across the board. So if you have, let's say you guys had 100 members at your facility and they're paying, $200 a month, whatever they're paying per month, increasing that $10 a month would increase your bottom line, your revenue to $100, or excuse me, $1,000 right there, just by increasing your rates by $10 a month for your 100 members. Now that would give access to Proteus for all of your members with that method, right? But at the same time, if you were just even charging the low end of the spectrum, $50 for a test, right? If you did 10 of those in a month, which is, definitely not a hard thing to do, that's going to give you $1,500 total, right? It's another $500 there. So in total, you're going to be able to generate revenue of around, $1,500 a month. That can be up to, obviously $18,000 a year. And that's a very, very reasonable, attainable thing that we've seen work for a lot of our customers. Now, let's see what would it look like if you did a multi-tiered approach. So let's say you were doing, 1 time a week, you did that monthly add-on style, right? Where you're having a client, have access to Proteus once a week, they're paying $70 more per month, right? For basically 4 sessions, right? Or maybe twice a week for $140 a month. Let's, add that to maybe selling a few training camps or these like 8-packs. Maybe that's we'll take that to around $200. And then let's say there's one-time use fees. You're charging $100 for single tests. You're doing $25 for individual training sessions. Something I left out here, but could easily put on here is maybe doing, follow-up tests for $50. But let's now go down below and see what that could look like if we just kind of picked a conservative way that you could be, packaging all this stuff together. You're doing 10, 1 time a week, 1 time a week add-ons. That's $700 right there. That's $70 times 10, right? Then you got 5 2 time a week add-ons, right? That's $140. That's, if you had 5 of those folks, that's another $700. Then let's say you sold some training camps to a few athletes or these 8-packs. Say if you did just 5 of those, that's $1,000 right there. If you did single time tests, you have people coming in, which I know, Darren, you have people come into your facility, just do a Proteus test that aren't even your members, right? That's $500 if you did 5 of those at $100, which is, again, even below what I think our average test is charging. And then if you did 5 single training sessions, people just coming in, maybe they're doing this Friday Night Lights program, which I love. Maybe that's at 20, let's say that was at $25. That's $125 right there. So right there, if you add all that together, that's just over $3,000 that you can generate in revenue with kind of this combination of strategies, which, to be fair, probably not a lot of places are going to be doing all these different strategies. But I just wanted to kind of show you how all these things could add up and how you can get to something really healthy, like a $3,000 a month, revenue generation from Proteus, from these different types of strategies put together. So, just figured I would kind of share that and then kind of go over kind of some just basic tips and resources for marketing your Proteus. We have a lot of great stuff in the community platform in Circle. You guys probably have already seen. Definitely go into that area of our of the community platform in Circle and really get it, to see all these guides. But biggest thing you can do is add Proteus to your website. We actually noticed not a lot of places have done that yet. We have a website template in that area where you can reference, and make sure you throw that into all of your, on your website. That really helps with search engine optimization, and really helps people find your Proteus and know that you have it. Definitely utilize our marketing handouts. We've made them. We have a whole list of a whole section of handouts that are for specific sports. So we have ones geared towards Gym Pop. We have ones geared towards baseball, towards football, towards basketball, for really any sport. And you can send those to clients, teams, coaches, whoever you want to. Definitely, watch our previous social media webinar that we did. Pay attention to, we have basically a weekly, I believe you're doing it weekly, Alex. I think I saw Alex on here. Kind of like what are some of the trends in social media? There's a better name that you have for that I'm forgetting right now, but that is in there.
You're super close.
What was it? Tell me the actual name.
It's called the Trend Report. So we're doing it every 2 weeks. We'll drop 3 trending audios for you guys, and then give you an example of content that works well, and then some ideas for you to kind of implement that at your site. Perfect.
Yeah, thanks. See, coming from the least trendy guy, that's why.
No, well, you're super trendy. Don't sell yourself short.
And then lastly, kind of a big thing that we're going to be doing pretty soon here, for those of you that might not have seen this in our, insiders event, we actually are doing, everyone here on this call is already kind of considered a Proteus certified trainer. But what we're doing now is we're opening up to kind of have this next tier of what we're going to call Proteus ambassadors, which is we're going to open up that the application period for that in early August. It's going to be probably August 8th right now. And once we take that cohort on, we're going to give you the ability to add your business to the Find a Proteus map. So we will, which we will then have on our website, so we can direct anyone who's looking for a Proteus, for training, for testing, for whatever. They can go to our website and go, hey, find a Proteus near me, and they will be directed towards your business. So pay attention to when that comes out. We will announce, everything on this community platform. So don't, pay attention to when that comes out. Definitely let us know if you want to, be an ambassador, and then from there we will get you on the map. So yeah, I think kind of as a last kind of discussion point, would love to talk about with anyone here, and maybe again start with you, Darren. If you have done any marketing, what has been most successful? Has it been social media? Has it just been word of mouth? What type of things have you found to be successful when you're marketing?
I mean, it's so with our 3 kind of sports, baseball, tennis, and softball, I mean, we haven't gone as much. Heck, I just updated my website for the first time in 7 years last week, because I'm trying to get the Proteus and stuff on it. So, but it's been, we get 1 to 2 people from a team on it. We get them using it almost like an ambassador, an influencer, but we get them using it, and then the rest of the team says, "Oh, holy cow, they're hitting the ball, or their backhand is sick now, or they got really faster," and everyone starts asking them. And honestly, that's how it develops. We really haven't had to do much outside of that, fortunately.
Got it. So you've been much more of a word of mouth, building the reputation, one client at a time, and kind of thing. Which honestly, to me, that's music to my ears, because the number one thing we want to be about is improving athlete performance. And if athlete performance is getting better, if they're using Proteus, then hopefully that's going to drive more athletes to you, and that's that kind of indirect way, right, of we're getting those athletes in, but through driving athletic success, which is our number one goal. So that, I love hearing that. I think what we've seen is that outside of that if you're trying to drive up those numbers a little bit more, you're trying to, really, reach people in your area that haven't, maybe haven't heard about it yet or don't know, aren't in your network. Some of these other things that we've kind of highlighted, back here on the, on what's, on the kind of resources page can really help drive that for you guys. So being proactive, sending these flyers to local coaches, teams, and, and parents can really help drive some of those, success and getting some more people into your facility. And keep in mind that one of my favorite parts about this is you can use Proteus as kind of like a pull strategy to get yourself new clients. Maybe they just come in and they just want to do a test on Proteus, but then they see your facility and like, well, why wouldn't I just train here too? And then that's ultimately how you're going to get a new member or a new, regularly paying client. And we see that happen, all the time. So, but sometimes it takes a little bit extra to get the, word out. We have been fortunate. Hopefully you guys have noticed, we certainly have noticed the increase of traffic ever since being on Quarterback on Netflix. It's definitely been nice for our incoming calls and everything, but hopefully that's affecting you guys as well. And you're feeling that, Mahomes positive push that the rest of us have felt. So, yeah, I'd love to open it up with anyone else. If anyone else has any things they'd like to, ask questions to anyone else on the group, anything they've seen work, both from the pricing or the marketing side, obviously feel free to jump in now. If not, we will definitely open this up on a community platform for you to ask questions there. Other members, I know, will jump in and provide advice, but we will also answer your questions there as well. So feel free. If nothing comes to mind now, you can always ask questions, not only in the main discussion board area, but you can also go into the marketing sections and leave comments and ask questions in that section as well. So if no one else has anything now, then I think I'll call that the end. Oh, we got a raised hand. I see a raised hand.
Hey.
So jump in here, Robert.
Appreciate it. So question for you. I mean, I'm not a PT, so this is just my thought from a baseball standpoint. One thing I've seen just as a scout is a lot of guys have the inability to work out every day, or at least inability to work out every day in season, or for that matter, frequently. Mm-hmm. And one thing that jumped out at me years ago with the Proteus and just everything that goes into it is that you have the ability to work out more frequently, have less likelihood for injury.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I'm thinking maybe I'm trying to figure out, is there a way that you would recommend to, use that to pitch for, let's say, a pitcher, a baseball player, to come in more frequently? Let's say it's okay for them to come in 3-4 times a week using the Proteus.
That's a great point. And I think that's where we see some of those businesses that use it in that multifaceted way, right? So let's say you have a gym, you're working with baseball, just to stay with that, that group. And let's say you have them coming into your facility maybe twice a week for training, and we're talking about like weight room training, and then maybe they're doing some other skill days, right? So they're coming in to do some, some pitching or some hitting. You can easily add Proteus in every facet of that. So you can start with, on those, days where they're coming in for training, you're using Proteus as, kind of one of the stations within that. They're really using it for peak power development, maybe some conditioning. But on those days when they're coming in for skill training, you're using it kind of like how Darren suggested, using a movement prep. You're trying to just get them warmed up on Proteus, getting them used to, getting all those motor patterns, firing. Then that way you can have them use it then as well. Now, maybe you're charging for that access, but maybe not. Either way, you're getting them to maybe come in another day. But certainly, we've also had people. One of actually the more successful ways we've actually seen Proteus help drive business for particularly sports performance businesses for athletes in season is, and I believe the first time I heard this was from Kyle King, was that he had a lot of I've heard of, obviously a lot of gyms will lose some of their athletes in season, right? Their athletes go and they play and they're not coming back into the gym to train. And part of the reason, to your point, Robert, is they're afraid to work out too much during the season because of the extra stress it's going to put on them. Well, one of the nice things is, because it's concentrically biased and because of the nature of the resistance, it's going to be much less of a load for them. And it's actually going to allow them to basically still work on that peak power development, maintain that high neuromuscular output, but without a lot of the, wear and tear on the, the contractile elements, on the fascia and all that. It's not going to create as much of that demand or for recovery that you would normally get with lifting weights. So they'll actually have them come in and do like a recovery day, and then maybe do maybe do some high, power work, but maybe at a lower volume. So there's lots of different ways you can work that in, but certainly you're completely right. It is definitely something that is safer to do more frequently than, say, weights because of that. So yeah, definitely ways you can do that. Go, Darren. I saw you raise your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say to that. I think it was Robert. I can actually. I won't take the idea away, but Andrew, who's the programming director out at Cressy, he sent me a few sample programs where they do exactly what Will was talking about, and they do a lot of Proteus and what they call movement days, in addition to the 2 or 3 strength days. I'll drop my email in the chat, but I can send you a few of the sample programs with that he gave me, just to maybe give you an idea.
Really appreciate that. Great. Yeah.
And Barrett, I saw you raise your hand, man. Jump in.
Yeah, I posted this in the community group too, but just I think what would help me a lot is any correlations to that on-field success. So like you mentioned in the Cressy podcast, like acceleration was showing better results in throwing velocity, I believe, than the overall power output. So anything that's specific like that, I think the more that I would have, and I'm sure everyone else is kind of the same, to say, well, if you're accelerating faster, that might be more important than overall power to someone who's trying to increase throwing velocity. The more information we can be armed with like that would be huge, because obviously great job of sorting through the data with the software, but still a lot. And, there's a lot of cool things that we could probably focus in on that we don't know about just because it probably hasn't even been discovered yet.
Yeah. And honestly, it's been one of those things where we have, we get that data, right? And it's challenging because what we have to do is make sure it's like, when we get the data from, say, Cressy or these other organizations, we have to make sure that like the Proteus data, it lines up with the testing data that they got, that's roughly around the same time. And that actually ends up being pretty challenging, unfortunately. Yeah, I understand now better why universities are the only ones that seem to ever do research, because there's so much more, controlled. But at the same time, what I think I'm hearing you say is it also giving you guys the actual access to those resources? Is it like preparing, like showing you the data so that you can share with clients? Is that kind of what you're looking for, or do you mean just generally speaking, share more of that as we find it?
Probably both, but yeah, anything that's specific to saying, like, hey, if you're training overhead throwers and you're looking to increase throwing velocity, like make sure you check acceleration. It seems to be a little bit more important than power. Like there's something like that will be big, and that way we can, if someone comes in and maybe their power doesn't go up, but their acceleration goes up 2 meters a second, we're like, oh, that's huge for what we're trying to do over just the power going up.
Something we're working on that I think you guys will really like, and I got my partner in crime, Justin Maskell, on this call. He and I are putting together what we're calling playbooks, which are going to be basically per sport. What are kind of the best practices from a programming and kind of testing perspective that we see? So how do you work it into tests? What are the tests we recommend? What are the metrics we think we've seen you should focus on for these specific athletes for these types of tests? Is it acceleration, for instance, Barrett? I'm like, for hitters, for instance, it's acceleration on trunk rotation, but it's power when you're looking at shot put and vertical jump, for instance. Like that's just, very quickly. Those are like some big ones. But then for throwers, those change a little bit more, right? So we're going to try to highlight some of that stuff, and then, obviously try to give you very kind of guidance on how you can build those programs around that data. So look for that coming in the next couple of months. We'll put that in the community profile, the community platform as well. And then we'll also at the same time probably do a webinar on each of those where we highlight some of those things. So kind of stay tuned on that. But as they come out, we'll put those up in the community platform. Go ahead, Darren. You raise your hand again.
No, that might have been. I think I might have actually helped. But if I were to comment on that, I would say we've had interns breaking down all of our tests and all of our baseball guys, perfect game, PBR, blast, whatever data they have, and we're still working through it. But I can tell you. Let's see if I've got the sheet near me somehow. What we've learned, and we've analyzed about 20 people so far. I'm looking at the sheet, but I think this actually goes into what Will, I think, mentioned on maybe the Cressy podcast is the shot put power has seen the most peak exit velo increases for us in baseball. We've let's see, the plyo trunk rotation. The acceleration on it has seen the biggest increases in bat speed and bad rotation acceleration, which is kind of the same thing, and are the push-pull in the diagonal push-pull, but the push-pull, both power and acceleration, I'm looking at it, has seen the most reasonable increases in throwing velo. And that's a small sample size of 20 people, but we're still trying to go through data. But, I mean, at least that's something, and it sounds like there's more to come that we're trying to work through on that too.
Dude, I love it. Darren, you and I got to sync later. I want that data, man.
We're actually, you know what, and what they're doing now, because they went through all the people with a lot of tests, they're still going through. We've got another 10 people to go to, but we're actually now comparing. We're going to look through it and compare all the tests now to, like, you know, their trap bar deadlift and their bench press or their dumbbell bench press and their reverse lunge. And we're going to try to correlate lifting gains to some of them too. So that's kind of the next project. Interns are beautiful.
Interns. I know I need an intern. I love it. Well, hey, I know we ran, I think we had this book for 45. I don't want to keep people on too long. But this was awesome. If anyone else has any questions that they want to send afterwards, like I said, feel free to drop them in the community channels. We will definitely answer them. And a special shout out to Darren for jumping on and answering so many questions. And thanks for everyone else for contributing. And if you have any questions, like I said, please reach out. Take care.
Thank you.